Hello, and welcome to the National Archives Foundation's virtual program series. I'm Patrick Madden, the Executive Director of the Foundation. We're the nonprofit partner to the National Archives. Through this foundation programming, we are pleased to open the virtual doors of the National Archives and share the holdings. More than 15 billion records, objects, films, letters, drawings, photographs, and most importantly, the stories of our nation's past. We've had a busy summer at the National Archives Foundation, and the fall is revved up. A few weeks ago, the Archives opened its latest special exhibition, All-American: The Power of Sports. Visitors and media have called it a home run. I hope you'll visit the museum and check it out. If you can't make it to DC, we have a number of resources from the exhibition on our website, archivesfoundation.org. Last week, we had a terrific kickoff program with ESPN about Title IX in the McGowan Theater, and tonight we're back with another history-inspired virtual conversation, The Life and Legacy of Roberto Clemente. This program is in partnership with the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. The Archives and the Foundation have an all-star lineup of programs connected to All-American. Be sure to check the event schedule on our website or follow us on social. In fact, right now, you can click that subscribe button on YouTube and help us grow our network. You won't miss a program. Tonight's program is supported by Anheuser-Busch, who is serving as the sponsor of our opening month of programming. Now let me introduce our moderator, who will welcome our two special guests, Rodney Slater. He is the senior partner at Squire Patton Boggs and former Secretary of Transportation under President Bill Clinton. He's a founding partner of the Washington, D.C. Nationals baseball team and chair emeritus of the Washington, D.C. Nationals Youth Baseball Academy. He's probably most famously known for his role as vice chair of the National Archives Foundation Board of Directors and one of my bosses. Rodney, thank you for hosting. I'm going to pass it over to you, and I can't miss the chance to say, let's play ball.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and thank you for the wonderful statement and introduction. And we welcome everyone who's with us this afternoon. We have a wonderful program planned, and it does help us to build on this wonderful exhibit that we have at the National Archives, All-American: The Power of Sports. We also are hosting this particular event during Hispanic Heritage Month, very, very critical and important as it relates to just the wonderful history and legacy of Roberto Clemente. And we just welcome everyone, and we're so happy that you're with us. We thank the National Baseball Hall of Fame for being a partner with us, and we congratulate and thank all of our sponsors for making today's program possible. The life and legacy of Roberto Clemente. I mean, such an icon, such a very special human being. We're going to hear a lot about him. We're going to hear a lot about not only his work on the diamond, but his work in the broader community. And we're going to hear stories about, what made him who he was. How did he grow up in this wonderful family that I'm sure we'll hear about, in this wonderful community that we'll hear about as well. We've got two distinguished guests who will help us really gain, I think, a deeper appreciation of the legacy of the man, his grace under fire, his fierce determination. And I'm excited about having them with us and hearing from them. Let me offer a few words of introduction for both, and then we'll get right into the discussion. First of all, I am so pleased that we actually have a Hall of Famer with us, Edgar Martinez. He is also a recipient of the Roberto Clemente Award in 2004. Edgar was born in New York, but raised in Puerto Rico. He fell in love with baseball, like so many of us, at an early age, and he learned the game really with some guidance from his cousin, future big leaguer Carmelo Martinez. While in college in 1982, Edgar attended a tryout camp run by Marty Martinez, who thought that he had talent and that he could develop that talent and become a big leaguer himself. So he encouraged Edgar to sign then a $4,000 contract with the Mariners. And good for Edgar that his cousin, Carmelo, was there to encourage him. Hey, take the money and take the chance. And that's exactly what he did. He was a good player and waiting for his moment all along. And I'll tell you, it happened, some might say in a flash with his becoming an overnight sensation, but it really was the hard work that brought him to the moment of opportunity. But at around age 32 or so, again, he just seemed to pop on the scene in a magnificent way, helping to lead the Mariners to their first division title. He had an American League best 3.56 batting average, or 356 batting average. He led the league in runs scored, 121, doubles, 52, on base average, 479. Again, just a significant performance. And in that deciding fifth game in the division series against the Yankees, he hit a 2-run 11th inning double that scored Joey Cora and Ken Griffey Jr. to send Seattle into the American League Championship Series for the first time in franchise history. He was noted the outstanding designated hitter on 5 different occasions over a 7-year period. And in 2004, the designated hitter award was actually named in his honor. And so again, just a champion in his own right, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2019. Now, Bruce, we've heard from Bruce before, Bruce Markusen. He is a member of the Hall of Fame Education Department. He really helps the Hall of Fame take its message to schools across the country through its virtual field trip technology program. He has extensive experience in the media and as a broadcaster, and can tell a good story. He has written a number of biographies focused on some of the leaders of the game, from Ted Williams to again, Roberto Clemente and others. He has received a number of awards, and one in particular was the McFarland Saber Research Award for an article that he did on this all-Black lineup, about the history-making lineup employed by the Pittsburgh Pirates in September of 1971. Again, we are happy that Bruce is with us again, and we're going to get right into our discussion. But Bruce, I know you've got a presentation and some slides about Roberto, and we look forward to hearing from you. And again, thank you for being with us again.
Well, thank you very much, Rodney, and welcome also to the great Edgar Martinez. This is my favorite photograph of Roberto Clemente as part of the collection at the Hall of Fame. There's just something very regal, very dignified about it, and I always enjoy seeing that picture of him. His arms folded down on one knee, the 2 bats. Looks like he's ready to go into the game. It just kind of sums up the dignity, I think, and the serious nature with which he approached the game of baseball. We're going to see a slide here in a moment of a younger Roberto Clemente when he was playing with a team in Santurce in his native Puerto Rico. Roberto Clemente was born August 18th, 1934 in a very small village called Carolina in Puerto Rico. And he was one of 7 children to Luisa and Melchor Clemente. His mother and father both worked very hard, instilled a strong work ethic in him. By our standards today, we would probably consider the Clemente family relatively poor. They had the basics, they had enough food to eat, they had clothing to wear, but they really didn't have many luxuries. And with a large family, meant that Luisa and Melchor had to work hard to support them, but they always did succeed in keeping their sons and daughters clothed and well-fed and really took care of them. It was obvious from an early age that Clemente loved to play ball. When he was very young, he would typically throw rubber balls up against the front stoop of his house. He would do this for hours on end. Now, he and his friends didn't have enough money to buy regulation bats and balls, so they improvised. They used guava tree limbs for bats, and they crushed tin cans into balls. That's how much these kids loved the game. Now, one day, a coach for a local amateur team, a man named Roberto Marin, happened to stop by when Clemente was playing ball with his friends. And he was immediately struck by Clemente's very strong throwing arm. At this point, Clemente was a shortstop. Marin signed him to play for his softball team, which was sponsored by a local rice company. And it was Marin who eventually converted Clemente to the outfield. Now, Clemente eventually made the transition from softball to baseball. Playing in his native Puerto Rico, he drew the attention of Major League Scouts. His first professional team was a team in Puerto Rico, the Santurce Cangrejeros, a team in the Puerto Rican Winter League. There, he was scouted by the Brooklyn Dodgers. They signed him in 1954. They gave him a bonus of $10,000, but they didn't bring him to the major leagues right away. And as a result, they lost him in a Rule 5 draft to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we'll see here a slide of a very young Clemente in those early years with Pittsburgh. In his first 5 seasons, he struggled on the field. He was an undisciplined hitter. He swung at too many pitches outside of the strike zone. And in the field and on the bases, he was overly zealous, overly aggressive, resulting in errors and base running mistakes. He also had to deal with off the field issues of race and ethnicity. Now, Clemente, as he often said, was a double minority. That's what he called himself, because he was both Latino, but also Black. He was dark-skinned. Many Latino players of the 1950s and 60s, they faced discrimination caused by their Latino heritage and also by their skin color. So they really faced racism on 2 fronts. Now, in those early years with the Pirates, Clemente was one of the few players who were Black or Latino on the Pirates club. And he kind of felt isolated. He was surrounded by mostly white players, wasn't as comfortable with them because he was learning the English language. He could speak English, but was not yet fully comfortable in it. One of the things that Latino players like Clemente had to face, they were often phonetically quoted by sports writers in their articles and their features. And we're going to see a slide here that shows some of the examples of this. So what these writers did when they wrote Clemente's words down on paper, they incorporated Clemente's Spanish accent into their transcriptions. So, for example, a word like this would be spelled as Deez, D-E-E-Z. And when you read an entire paragraph that was transcribed this way, it was sometimes difficult to understand what Clemente and other players were trying to say. Let's see if we can bring up that slide that shows this practice of quoting Clemente phonetically. So you see some of the very common words that would be said, and he would say them with a heavy Spanish accent, and they would come out a little bit differently. And the writers, instead of really giving him the benefit of the doubt as they did to all other players, they didn't do this to Southern players with Southern accents, but they did it to Latino ball players with Spanish accents. So if you read a whole paragraph that was written out this way, number one, it was hard to understand what Clemente was saying. And number two, it made him sound less than intelligent. And that was certainly not him. He was very intelligent. He was fluent in Spanish. He was capable of carrying on conversations in English. He's a very smart man. Also, many of Clemente's Topps baseball cards listed his name as Bob, and there you see one of his cards from the 1960s. This was an effort to Americanize Latino ball players like Clemente, to make them more recognizable within American culture. Clemente, simply put, hated this. He often corrected people who would call him Bob or Bobby, He would tell him that his name was Roberto. That was his name. He was proud of that name. Now, despite these obstacles, Clemente did emerge as a superstar, with his best seasons coming during the 1960s. And here we see a classic photograph of him wearing that sleeveless uniform so familiar to the Pirates in that era. 1960 is when he began his breakthrough. He batted .314 with 16 home runs. He helped the Pirates reach the World Series. He played extremely well in that year's Fall Classic, and he helped the Pirates upset the New York Yankees in 7 games, one of the biggest upsets in World Series history. Really, from that point on until the end of his career, Clemente did not have a single bad season. He won batting titles in 1961, 64, 65, and 67. So 4 titles. In 1966, he won the National League's Most Valuable Player Award. He also won 12 Gold Glove Awards for his superhuman play in right field. Now, as he matured as a player, the integration of the Pirates also helped him become more comfortable. As the 60s progressed, the Pirates incorporated more and more Black and Latino players. Clemente felt more at home and really emerged as a team leader. His natural leadership skills came to the forefront. He also became a very important part of history in the early 1970s. We're going to show you a slide here of the first all-Black lineup. In 2021, we celebrated this at the Hall of Fame because it was the 50th anniversary of it. So here's what happened. 1971, this was 24 years after Jackie Robinson broke through the color barrier.
Right.
September 1st of that year, Clemente and the Pirates fielded the first all-Black lineup in Major League history. Every one of Pittsburgh's 9 starters that day were either Black Americans or Black Latinos. You had 2 Panamanians, you had 1 Cuban, 1 Puerto Rican who was Clemente, and there were 2 Hall of Famers that started that day, Clemente and his good friend Willie Stargell. Now, what's really great about this story is that just 6 weeks later, essentially this same Pirate team would go on to defeat the Orioles in the World Series. It was a major upset, and it really kind of showcased a tremendous lesson, I think, for everybody. By developing the best players from different backgrounds, white, Black, Latino, getting the best players from all those groups, the Pirates showed what integration at its best and highest point could do, and that was produce a world championship. Now, during that 1971 World Series, Clemente had an enormous breakthrough. Here we see this beautiful photograph from Sports Illustrated, Clemente sliding into one of the bases during the series. A huge change in the perception of Clemente. This is really when he became known, a nationally known superstar. People around the country were able to watch him shine in this great 7-game World Series. All the games were broadcast on national TV. You also had the first night game in World Series history, which drew tremendous TV ratings. Leading the underdog Pirates to a 7-game victory against the Orioles, he batted .414 with 12 hits and 2 home runs, and he was named the World Series MVP. Now, he was toward the end of his career. He was in his late 30s, but finally, he was getting the due. He was getting the appreciation and respect that he probably should have received earlier, but it was difficult to achieve in a small market like Pittsburgh. You play on the national stage of the World Series,
Right.
Things turn out differently. Let's talk a little bit about Clemente as a humanitarian. We have some great pictures of him with kids. He regularly gave back to society. Each winter, he'd go home to his native Puerto Rico. He would give free baseball clinics to children who didn't have the money to pay for such instruction, wouldn't charge them at all. Also, during the season, he made frequent visits to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital and never wanted any publicity. Didn't tell writers, didn't ask a cameraman to come along. He did this very quietly, kind of off the radar, but he wanted to visit with kids, especially kids struggling with serious illnesses. Now, Clemente's selflessness really continued until the end of his life. In this next slide here, we're going to see this tragic headline from the New York Daily News. And this was at the end of 1972. Now, after the 72 season, there was a massive earthquake in Nicaragua. Clemente had been in Nicaragua the previous winter. He had managed a Puerto Rican Winter League team. When he heard about the devastation in Nicaragua, he remembered how kind the Nicaraguan people had been to him. And he decided to spearhead a mission of mercy. And he organized boatloads of relief supplies, also plane loads as well. But he heard that some of the relief goods were being intercepted by the Nicaraguan militia. So he vowed to be aboard the next flight himself. New Year's Eve, his DC-7 crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. All 5 men aboard the plane, including the 38-year-old Clemente, were killed, and his remains were never found. It was a huge shock to the baseball world to lose a superstar like this. He was still an active player. He had already said he was going to come back and play for another season, and he was gone, only 38 years of age. It was a tragedy felt in Pittsburgh and Puerto Rico, but really throughout baseball and throughout America. Now, we do have a number of Clemente-related artifacts here at the Hall of Fame and Museum. Here are just a couple that we feature. On the left, that is the cap that he wore when he collected his 3,000th career hit. He actually wore the cap under his helmet. That was a typical thing for him to do. This milestone event, which took place September 30th, 1972, occurring 50 years ago. Also on the right, we have his first professional contract, which he signed with a team in Santurce, a team in the Puerto Rican Winter League. The contract written entirely in Spanish, which made sense because most of the players on the Santurce team were Spanish-speaking players. We're going to go back to our original photograph, the one that I really feel is just so regal and really kind of sums up what he was all about. And it's from late in his career. We talk about Clemente's legacy. His legacy is wide-ranging and in some cases complicated. It's a legacy that involves a number of components: his remarkable perseverance, his ability to overcome racial obstacles, also the increase in the number of Latino players over the past 5 decades. So many young Latinos wanting to emulate Clemente, become baseball players. And also the story of what it means to be a true hero. You know, we do tend to throw the word hero around a bit too much in sports, but it's a completely accurate word in describing the great Roberto Clemente. So that's a short summary of many of Roberto's tremendous accomplishments over the years. It was a 38-year life filled with so much goodness, so much of an effort to be generous, to help others, and also, of course, of a Hall of Fame ball player. At this point, we'll send it back to our moderator, Rodney Slater. Rodney?
Yes. Bruce, thank you. And, thank you for giving us the details about how clearly he had raw talent early on and it was recognized. But he didn't stop there. I mean, he honed that talent and he became a master, literally a master of his craft. You know, a lot of times we talk about that with various professions, but I don't think we talk about it enough with sports, where people really have to practice. They have to know their opponent. They have to know themselves, their strengths and weaknesses. And can you maybe just talk a little bit more about that? And what I'd like for you to do, you go to a lot of schools, you're talking to a lot of students. How do you take that part of his story to help them understand what their journey to greatness can be, whatever the field? But just a little bit on that, if you would.
It's a great question, Rodney. Even superstar players like Clemente, you don't become a Hall of Fame player on pure talent alone. Maybe you can make the major leagues on pure talent. But if you want to stick, if you want to become a great player like a Clemente or an Edgar Martinez, yes, you have to work at it. Years ago, I met Willie Stargell, Clemente's longtime teammate and friend with the Pirates. He came to Cooperstown to address some students in our grandstand theater. I was lucky enough to go to lunch with him, talk to him about Clemente that day. And he told me a story about how Clemente worked at his throwing. He was known as much as anything for this phenomenal throwing arm. Some have called it the greatest throwing arm of any outfielder in baseball history, but he had to work at it. He had to hone that skill. And he talked about a pregame drill Stargell did, that Clemente did. He would put a garbage can near third base, and it would be upright. And from right field, Clemente would practice making throws, and he would try to throw the ball right into the garbage can. And inevitably, he would make a few throws that landed in the garbage can or bounced off the garbage can.
Yes.
So it was incredible accuracy. So this was something that he had to practice. We saw it in the game as maybe it looked like a natural talent. Oh, he's got this incredible throwing arm that's God-given. Yeah, to an extent it is, but he also had to work at it. And this is what he did by doing a pregame drill that was probably never filmed. Most people didn't see. I had never heard about it, and I had studied Clemente, but Willie Stargell was there to see it. And that was one of the things that Willie admired, this work ethic, this willingness to practice and do these mundane but very important drills. And that's how Clemente was able to become a great player and maintain his greatness, especially from right field.
Thank you. Thank you. And Bruce, I'm glad you mentioned Edgar in your response, because clearly we've got someone with us today who had to do the very same thing. And I want to let him know I'm coming to him, but I want to also just ask this of you. I want to thank you also for telling us about his family and his home life and the hard work of his parents and the example they provided for him. I mean, you know, if you're gonna take a limb and make a baseball bat, and if you're gonna take a can and make a baseball, someone is showing you how you have to work with what you have to get to where you want to go. So just maybe say a little bit more about that. And then I do want to go to Edgar. And I just very much appreciate you for acknowledging that about him. And I know that he talked a lot about his parents and how appreciative he was. And I think that too was why he wanted to give so much back as well, because they had given so much. But let me just come to you on that.
Sure. Part of it was his love of the game.
Yes.
Obviously, you love the game when you're willing to go to such extremes. I'm not going to let the lack of basic equipment prevent me from playing. So
Exactly.
you start with that. But yeah, there is that work ethic, that ingenuity. We're going to improvise. We're going to come up with a way so that we can still play the game, even though this is not official or optimal equipment. There was definitely a work ethic that came from his mother, Luisa, his father, Melchor. I mentioned they both worked. Melchor worked on a sugarcane plantation. Luisa worked as a laundress at the plantation. They both put in long hours. And of course, after her workday, Luisa, put in time preparing the meals, helping the kids get ready for school. So they put in long hours, long days. And his love, his respect for the family, for his parents, for teaching him these important things was really exemplified after the Game 7 win in the World Series, when he was interviewed by Bob Prince. And before he answered Bob Prince's first question, he said, "I want to speak to my parents watching in Puerto Rico in Spanish." And he thanked them. He asked them for his blessing. His parents came first before he wanted to talk about anything else after this great accomplishment of winning the World Series and winning the MVP award. It tells you a lot about Clemente.
It sure does. And thank you, Bruce. Oftentimes as parents, we say that our greatest gift to the world, well, it's our children, right? And I think clearly, his parents can take that kind of pride in him, and he can take, the acknowledgement of them as an expression of his pride for them. And so I just thought it was a beautiful piece, and I'm glad you were able to give us even more detail about that, because that's what keeps you, grounded. That's what keeps you focus when things are difficult. And you shared many instances about how he found difficulty here or there. And we'll come back to some of that. But Edgar, let me come to you because I mean, born in New York, but then raised in Puerto Rico. Talk a little bit about just the significance of baseball in Puerto Rico. I mean, we have gotten so much talent, you know, from Puerto Rico when it comes to really not just the baseball, but the music, the culture, the art. I mean, just the dynamism of it all. Can you just, Edgar, talk a little bit about your own experience and how Roberto was a wonderful role model for you, and also we want to get into how you have been a role model for others as well. So let me come to you if you're there for us.
Yes. Well, everything started.
By the way, we love that backdrop.
I'm very proud of it. But everything started with Roberto Clemente, right? Roberto Clemente, he was the first player from Puerto Rico to make it in a big way. And he was a #1 player. Everybody knew who Roberto Clemente was. Everybody loved him and idolized him. And he was, for us, like this big hero. And I started watching and playing baseball because Roberto Clemente, right? In 1971, when he had that great World Series, my aunt was watching some of the highlights, and she was screaming. I think it was he hit a home run, and she was screaming and jumping in the living room. And after that, I wanted to watch. I wanted to just learn about Roberto Clemente, learn about the game. And I started playing right after that. And I wanted to be like Roberto Clemente. I wanted to be a superstar. And it became an obsession and a dream of mine to become a great baseball player. And for me and for many players that came after Roberto, he was the one that put that opportunity in their minds. Like,
yes,
Roberto, Puerto Rican from here, if he's been able to do this, it might be possible for us too.
yes.
And, so he was a great example for all of us, and a great motivation for many players that came after him to play baseball and hopefully played in the big leagues one day. So for me, it was a key moment at an early age.
Right. And so we can, I think, all hear your aunt in the background with the screams. I think we've all had that sort of thing in our own family, but you're right, it does get your attention. And let's face it, we often find our value in that which is valuable to people we love, you know, whether that's a family member or a friend or whatever. And but you use the word obsession. I want to go to that because I do think that you have to have some of that to really hone your talent. And I in the introduction, I talked a lot about your performance, like at 32 and on, and we talked a lot about Roberto's, you know, when he was in his 30s. And a lot of times we think, no, you've got probably more energy and more skill a little earlier, but there's something about it gelling, and there's something about it becoming refined, and the obsession to make that possible. Talk a little bit about your own experiences with just getting it as best as you can when it comes to what it takes to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, obviously it does takes a lot of work, but it also start with a strong desire,
Mhm.
something that really is something that you think about all day in occasions, every single day is in your mind, something that you actually enjoy uh, in a big way, even if it takes work. Uh, and it becomes an obsession, like you wanted to be the best player that you can be. And I think in a way, like Roberto Clemente was working on his arm to be the best he could be, it is a way, a little bit of obsession with that desire to be to do your job right and be the best that you can be. Um, and after that, everything comes in different steps.
Mhm.
After you have that strong desire, the strong desire leads to a strong discipline.
Mhm.
You have to have great discipline. Uh, After the discipline, you keep it keeps shaping your work habits
Mhm.
and your work habits, and then you set goals. Even if they're very personal, they don't
Mhm.
have to be shared with anybody. But now you have goals, and you just go after them. And it can be a short uh, term goal, which it could be for the game. Then it becomes uh, a season goal, and it becomes a career goal.
Mm.
So, and slowly one day you know you end your career and you look back and you go, it's like, how all this happened? So, but those are the steps that are required to actually have a long career and being able to be able to make it to the Hall of Fame.
Yes, yes. And Edgar, let me ask this. I touched on it a little bit during your sort of breakout season. That game 5 of the division series. I mean, it's the 11th inning, right? And you're at the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you can recall the moment, but can you describe it for us? I mean, what was your confidence level? Had
Yeah.
you thought about something like that before, and now it's there, and
Yeah.
you've got to embrace it, right? So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, because it was the double that brought in 2 runs,
Yeah.
and quite exciting.
Well, that year I had a breakout year. I had the
Yes.
best year, uh, and I was very confident throughout the whole year. I was very consistent.
Yes.
I didn't have hardly any lows, but in that game, the previous at bat, I had the same opportunity to tie the game, and McDowell was pitching at the moment, and he struck me out with a split fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to the dugout, and obviously I was down that I didn't came through. And Norm Charlton, or stopper, he came to me and he walked to me and say, "Hey, stay ready. You're gonna get the opportunity again, and you're gonna win the game for us." So that kind of, brought me to think about the next at bat.
Yes.
And as the game progresses, I start thinking about it, and the opportunity came again. Similar situation. So McDowell's throw fastball. I took the fastball, and I felt like I know what I'm gonna get. I'm gonna get a split, and I got it, and I made solid contact, and That's when I hit the double. But Norm Sharton was a big help in that at bat.
Excellent, excellent. You know, what's magical about this, and I think we all experience this with sports, is that it seems like you almost slow down the flow of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it very exhilarating that you can remember the pitches. I mean, this was not yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? You can remember the pitches. And there are those of us who watch, and there are these moments that we have in our own experience as a spectator, and we can remember the formation, the pitcher, the pitch, the batter, all of that as well. And, I think we're learning more about how you can take the experiences of sports and actually apply them to engaging young people and telling them about their careers and the contributions that they can make. We know that you've done a lot in that area as well, just as Roberto. So before I go back to Bruce, let me just ask you to talk a little bit about some of your humanitarian activities, and is that also, say, a lesson learned from Roberto as well?
It was very, it had an impact on me, especially the stories that I heard and the way he lost his life. And it makes a difference to me. I work right now for years, been trying to help muscular dystrophy. I have a nephew that have Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a golf tournament that we raised over $3 million in the span of 17 years. I've been involved with we used to have a foundation that provide scholarships to students of color that want to become teachers. And also we give them support the first 2 years of their profession. And that was something that we've been involved with. And in Puerto Rico, especially after this climate changes, we have some disasters, Maria, a few years ago, and now Ian, this hurricane. So we've been able to help, families. In this latest one, we've been able to help about 50 families that lost everything. They lost everything, and in partnership with Carlos Delgado's foundation, a pastor that is in our neighborhood, and Costco, and the Costco founder has been instrumental in this. We've been able to order pretty much what they lost inside their homes, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll be able to have everything in their homes. So those are the areas that I've been involved with, and definitely learning about Clemente, it makes an impact in my decisions how to help the communities.
Very good, very good. Well, Edgar, let me also mention, I'm very proud of our law firm. We have a foundation, and since Maria, some years ago, we've actually had a number of fellows that have been assigned to Puerto Rico.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And so we've worked with a number of organizations there, and just very proud of that work. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that at some point. But let me ask you this. Did you ever, this is a question that came in from our audience, and we asked those of you who are listening, if you have questions, please type them in and we'll try to get to them. But a question that came in was, did you ever think about number 21 and possibly wearing Roberto's number?
Well, to me, when I came to the Mariners, it was basically I had to take the number they give you. That's but after I start doing better and establish myself, yeah, it came to my mind whether if I wanted to wear the number.
Yes.
But I also felt that I want to respect that number. It was something
Mhm.
that it's only 121,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I decided no, it's Roberto Clemente, that number, that's his number, and
Yes.
I'm not gonna try to wear that. So it was I respected his number 21.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it reminds me of this wonderful scene in the Jackie Robinson movie where I believe he and Pee Wee Reese are embracing on the field. And Pee Wee is basically saying to him, I want my family in the stands to know who I am. And so he embraces Robinson. And clearly there was the issue of, color, discrimination, racism, that sort of thing. Yeah. And he makes this point about how maybe in the future we will all wear, in that case, 42, and no one will know the difference. Mm-hmm. Meaning, at the end of it all, sports helps us to find common ground. Mm-hmm. It helps us to look beyond the things that divide us. And really, it allows us to cheer for our team. Our team, yeah, made up of anybody and everybody. That's our team. And I think that's the story about that. And I do think that with the Roberto Clemente Day, we do get the joy of seeing people in 21 and recognizing just the wonderful contribution that he made. Before I go to Bruce, I want to say this, though. We also get a chance with the Designated Hitter Award to celebrate you. What was it like winning it for sure, as the top designated hitter, but more importantly, to have it named in your honor. And now when people win, we celebrate the person who wins, but we also continue to celebrate you and what you represent to the sport as well. So do you ever have thoughts about that, and can you share them with us?
Well, before Bud Selig made that announcement, it will never cross my mind. That was, I never expected anything like that to happen. And I couldn't believe it. I almost like froze. Like I couldn't believe it. But looking back, it's like it just give you a sense of satisfaction.
Yes.
Because baseball is a long career. You have a lot of dreams. You have a lot of ups and downs and frustrations at times. And when you are rewarded with something like that, you get a lot of satisfaction. And then you look back at all the people along the way that played a role, like my grandparents, Marty Martinez, Carmelo Martinez, and many other friends and yeah, other players, coaches, managers that play a role in me being able to get to that point. So it is great satisfaction. A very special moment also to share with my family. It's algo very something very special.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, when we talk about your batting average, 356, I mean, that's still striking out, right? Baseball is a hard sport when it comes to, you know, just the number of times you strike out as compared to the number of times you get a hit, and then the number of times you get a home run, and then, you know, so it's probably the most, I'd say, just one of the most nerve-wracking games to play, because you are missing it more than hitting it, you know, and keeping your confidence in that environment has to be something quite remarkable. And we just salute you for keeping your confidence, listening to the advice that opportunity will come again, and being ready, right?
Yeah.
And so we just wish you continued success as you not only keep the legacy of Roberto Clemente alive and strong, but as you also continue to build your own legacy and allow us to salute you as well. So
thank you.
Thank you. Now, I want to come to Bruce. Bruce, we're closing in on the time, but I wanted to ask you this, and it really goes to the last point you were making about Roberto, just with your just sterling presentation. But you mentioned that you didn't say he was 83, right? I mean, you acknowledged that he was 38. I mean, you know, even in well, I was about to say, even the Bible says that it's 70 as the promise, right? And so if you go beyond that, it's, you know, it's strength of personality and just being blessed beyond measure. But I think we can also say that Roberto Clemente lived a full life in the 38 years. And can we, let's maybe wrestle with that as we come to the close of our presentation. You know, a lot of people say it doesn't matter how long, but how well.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know that he had some difficulty sleeping. But, you know, but he was always awake when he was awake.
Mm-hmm.
And so say a little bit about the significance of getting all out of the life you have, and frankly, how being immortalized because of your contributions and maybe becoming a member of the Hall of Fame, it affords all of us, those who remain, the short time that we have, the opportunity to continue to celebrate and to elevate the example that you represent. Bruce, you want to say a little bit about that maybe? And that's what the Hall of Fame does. I mean, you've got these icons and their stories, and with your virtual school program, you're telling that story to students. Do you ever sort of think about that, and how might you share with us your thoughts about Clemente and the 38 just good years that he gave us?
Yeah, absolutely, Rodney. I think of the exhibit when people first come into the Hall of Fame in the lobby. It's character and courage. There are 3 statues. One of the statues is Lou Gehrig. One of the statues is Jackie Robinson. The third is Roberto Clemente. None of these men lived particularly long lives. I believe Gehrig was 37, if I'm not mistaken. Clemente was 38 when he died. Robinson lived a little bit longer, but still relatively young. He died from the effects of diabetes. He was only 53. These are 3 of the most heroic characters in baseball history. They represent ideals of character and courage as well as anybody. Yet none of them, you know, saw their 55th birthday. They all died before that. And it does tell us that you can accomplish an awful lot in a short span of time. In 38 years, Roberto Clemente married to his wife, Vera. She never remarried after his death. I think that tells you something about the love between them. They had 3 beautiful children, Roberto Jr., Luis, and Enrique. On the field, Clemente had this phenomenal career. It went from 1955 till 1972. I ran down some of the statistical accomplishments for him earlier. He helped the Pirates win 2 world championships. He made the Baseball Hall of Fame, albeit posthumously. There was a special election held after his passing on New Year's Eve. Lou Gehrig, similar in terms of all that he accomplished in a short span. Jackie Robinson, civil rights hero. We know about his great accomplishments on and off the field. So yeah, sometimes great people, they're not with us as long as we'd like. They don't always have the years that they would like, that their family would like, but they live every day to try to do something, try to accomplish something. And I think it's a good lesson for any of us. Now, that doesn't mean we can be heroes every day, because the situation may not present itself, but we can try to accomplish something positive each day, even on our day off. Do something productive, whether it's around the house, helping a neighbor, helping your son or daughter. It's really the way I think that Clemente, Gehrig, and Robinson all lived. Make the most of the time that you have.
That's excellent. Well, Bruce, we're going to let that be the last word. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the Hall of Fame. I haven't been, and so I'm looking forward to coming and seeing the statues as you've talked about them, and reflecting on the thoughts that you've shared with us. Edgar, we really appreciate you and what you represent, continuing to build on the legacy of Roberto Clemente, but also building your own legacy as well, and making all of Puerto Rico and all of the U.S. just very, very, very proud.
Thank you.
That allows me to say this one last thing about the National Archives. You know, the National Archives is very much like the Hall of Fame. And we celebrate people, but more importantly, we celebrate documents. We celebrate the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the various amendments. We celebrate those principles that make us who we are as a nation. We celebrate the documents that where the founders did the best they could in the moment that they had, but also gave us the benefit of amendment, the benefit of being able to self-correct in their charge to us to be about the business of creating this more perfect union. And so I think because of that, there's this natural synergy with baseball, and maybe all of sports, but baseball as well in particular, because it's a hard game, and you're hitting and missing, and you're striking out much more than you're getting on base. But you go back and you suit up again and you look for the next opportunity. And that's really what America is about, being forever young and always believing that our best is yet to come. And so in that spirit, we close our session for today. We salute and thank God for the life and legacy of Roberto Clemente. And we thank all of our program participants for giving us just a very enriching and spirit-filled experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the time will. Oh, you know what?